Greetings and salutations, everyone. My name is Kiorkof, and welcome to my YouTube channel. Today, we're going to be conducting a live mock draft here on the channel for a 12-team half PPR scoring format. And in specific, we're going to be drafting wide receivers with our first overall pick because, in the last couple mock drafts that I've done over the last couple days, I've been heavily focusing on drafting 2 running backs within the first 3 rounds because I think that is an extremely vital strategy going into the 2020 season. But you could always still accomplish that by drafting a wide receiver with your first overall pick because perhaps they're the best player still available on the board. So we're going to go ahead and try a couple strategies here on fantasypros.com before we get into the live mock draft where we draft Michael Thomas or Davante Adams in the first round. Then we're going to go live. For those of you looking to just get to the live mock draft, go down in the description of the video. You can go ahead and find my timestamps there, which all the different timestamps are available. Now, another thing to mention, while you're down in the description of the video, don't forget Andrew Kiorkof's 2020 Fantasy Football Draft Guide is now available. For those of you looking to go ahead and find that, you can go to my Patreon, patreon.com/AndrewKiorkof or AndrewKiorkof.com. Both those links are down in the description. If you're looking for more information on what's going to be inside of the draft guide, you can go over to the channel in which there's a video pretty much talking about it, or you just go to the Patreon and the video is also there. So outside of that, for those of you who take advantage, I really do appreciate it. For those of you who have already picked up Andrew Kiorkof's 2020 Fantasy Football Draft Guide, go to the comments section, let me know, and let everybody else know what you think about it. I mean, again, this is a thing about word of mouth. I can only talk about it so much, but I'm going to keep harping on it. I'm telling you guys, it'd be a great investment going into your 2020 seasons. But regardless, let's talk about fantasy football and let's talk about drafting wide receivers early. Again, even though I do preach drafting 2 running backs within the first 3 rounds, you could definitely draft a Michael Thomas and or a Davante Adams with your first overall pick in a half or full PPR scoring format and still find success. But you're going to be, tested surely and pretty quickly, in my opinion, throughout your drafts because the running back position is going to diminish. The top 12 to 16 guys are going to be gone within the first 2 rounds, in my opinion. After that, it's all about you being able to adapt and find value at later picks at the running back position and not heavily tunneling for those running backs. If, for example, the 3rd round arrives and there isn't a top 15 running back still left available, I'm going to opt for a wide receiver because those guys are going to probably score more than the respective running backs that are still available. I have to pick and choose exactly when I want to attack the running back position. So we're going to do that starting off a little bit with a warm-up here at the number 5 overall spot because, again, this is probably where you're going to have to pick in order to grab Michael Thomas and for sure find him in the first round. Outside of that, I mean, I've seen him go a little bit later in drafts, but typically you'll have to draft him at 1.05. Okay, so starting it off, let's go ahead and let's warm up here. Sorry about that. Let's draft Michael Thomas right out the gate and see what kind of roster we can construct with him. Again, we are drafting here on fantasypros.com. For some reason, they like drafting quarterbacks in the first rounds because that's how they assume everything is going to break down. As you can see, the available players that are still on roster, there is still great talent. There's still good running backs available, Kenyon Drake, Aaron Jones, all this kind of jazz. So let's go ahead. We'll take a running back in the 2nd round because, again, we still want to have great running back talent and see what ends up coming back to us in the 3rd round. Again, the rest of the top 15 to 16 running backs kind of diminished right off the bat. In this specific scenario, Leonard Fournette's not a bad option, but like I was mentioning, you probably want to go ahead and opt out of drafting a Leonard Fournette over a Kenny Golladay or a DJ Moore or a Juju Smith, Amari Cooper, because these guys are probably going to score more this upcoming season. So at this point, we're going to take Kenny Golladay in the 3rd. Now, if George Kittle or Travis Kelce was available, I would have made that decision. But at this moment in time, I think I'm pretty happy with a 3rd round wide receiver. Now that we get into the 4th round, we end up looking at what is available at running back. Le'Veon Bell still on the board, Jonathan Taylor. Look, everything here as of this moment in time is going to be the biggest decision that I have to make in my respective draft. The 4th round running backs, I definitely let, Fournette and David Johnson and Connor, Melvin Gordon go ahead and come off the board. But if Chris Carson made it to me in the 3rd round, I would have made that decision. But at this moment in time, am I comfortable starting one of these guys as my RB2? Sure. But am I too excited about one of them? And am I ready to pull the trigger on one and, make them my RB2? I'm not too excited about any of them. So at this point, I think I'm going to just sit here and I'm going to draft the best available wide receiver. Just start off with 3 stud wide receivers. Take my Robert Woods. In my opinion, now I have 3 wide receiver ones. It's not really a 0 RB draft. Well, luckily for me, the wide receivers came off the board because all these respective teams, they needed wide receivers because they didn't address them early. So I get to take advantage of that scenario and go ahead and draft a running back that, again, I'm not too high on, but now that we're in the 5th round, I'm pretty excited about their potential. At this moment in time, looking at the available guys, I want someone that's going to touch the ball 300 times. I want a workhorse back. I think Le'Veon Bell presents that to me. I understand that Jonathan Taylor is gaining hype this offseason, but until I am given 100% confirmation that he is going to be the starter for that team, I'm going to have to draft him with Marlon Mack in tandem. And then if I have to do that, that's a 5th round pick and a 10th round pick that's gone off my board. And then I got to also wait until one of them ends up winning the job. But regardless, for now, we're going to go with a Le'Veon Bell here with the selection, a guy that's going to catch the ball 60 plus times and then potentially have some upside this upcoming season in comparison to what he was dealing with last year. Now, we get into the 6th round. Now, there's obviously quarterbacks that I could draft here. Again, the quarterbacks will probably start to really move off the board within the next 2 rounds. And now that Dak Prescott has already come off the board. As it currently stands, the running back position, I could go ahead and grab my 3rd guy in a Cam Akers or DeAndre Swift, the guys that I'm perfectly happy with, or Ronald Jones, who's slowly but surely winning the job there and solidifying it. As of right now, I don't really need myself a wide receiver. I already got my top 3 studs. Evan Ingram's not a bad idea right now, but again, he's a little risky. So why don't we just go ahead? We'll take our running back, or we'll take a DeAndre Swift in the 6th round. Hope he can beat out a Kerryon Johnson. And then as the picks come back to me, let's go to close that. We are in the 7th round. The quarterback position, again, still available on the board. A couple guys that I'm pretty excited about, but I think I can go ahead and wait until the 8th round, maybe 9th round, until I can pull the trigger on one of these guys. Of the remaining players, again, I'm pretty high on Evan Ingram. Now that I've already grabbed my 3 running backs, but I think the best way to go about this, now that I've kind of invested in lower end running backs, I don't have a Dalvin Cook and an Aaron Jones. Because of that, I'm going to always potentially be switching my flex position based on matchups, based on opportunity. Again, DeAndre Swift isn't going to start out as a starter. So maybe we go ahead and we take Ronald Jones here. We secure our 4th running back, and then we can go ahead and for the rest of the draft progressively kind of adjust and address the rest of my starting positions. Starting off with the quarterback, let's look at what is available. I'm pretty excited about a guy like Carson Wentz in the 8th round. Again, with a full offense, with guys that are actually going to be healthy this upcoming season, hopefully. Carson Wentz has a lot of upside. I think he's the first quarterback in NFL history to throw for, over 3,000 or 4,000 yards without having a wide receiver, surpass 500 receiving yards. Like, that in itself is crazy. The amount of adjusting that they had to do on a weekly basis, just purely based on the wide receiver position, the inexperience they had there. Now they get their studs back. It seems like a match made in heaven. But regardless, looking at what's available, of the available players, again, I'm probably going to wait on tight end. We'll go ahead. We'll draft a Jamison Crowder to be my 4th wide receiver, which I'm always, happy about. Anytime I can get Jamison Crowder, I'm happy. Then we'll go into the 9th round and draft a guy like Carson Wentz, like I was eyeing. And then the 10th round is probably going to be my tight ends. Again, I can go ahead and I can draft another running back. You see these running backs flying off the board. That typically happens where the handcuffs are starting to be picked. But I don't mind taking a Gronk in the 10th round and closing out this draft at the 5th spot. Again, drafting a wide receiver in the 1st round did not really hurt me very much. I did go relatively heavy on wide receiver, but because I was able to kind of wait on running backs and invest in guys that I personally think can have good seasons this year. Now, sure, I don't have more than 4 running backs on roster, and I'd like to go ahead and address and grab more guys. There's still available starters here. Adrian Peterson, Boston Scott, with the injury of Miles Sanders as of late, could be an available option. You still have Justin Jackson, who's getting first-team reps within the Chargers offense. Again, we're looking like we're in a pretty, stable position. 3 stud wide receivers, 2 at least good running backs within the first 5 rounds, and then you got your flex that is always going to be the upside. Decent bench wide receiver, you're starting tight end and quarterback. I'm pretty happy with this overall. Let's go ahead and move on. Let's go and draft at a different position to kind of give you guys some perspective on if you wanted to draft a wide receiver later in the 1st round, potentially Devontae Adams, who is the thumbnail. We can go ahead and do that. So let's switch on over and let's draft Devontae Adams from the 10th spot. Now, again, this is typically how drafts are going to go. There's always going to be a possibility that Clyde Edwards goes ahead, and so does Dalvin Cook. As of this moment in time, now that Dalvin Cook has said publicly, I am no longer worried about my contract. I'm here to play and help our team win. That is what I want to hear, and that is why I'm starting to draft Dalvin Cook back into the top 5 of the running back position. A guy that nearly averaged 19 points per game last season and didn't even finish the full season. If he had finished the full season, I think he would have finished as the number 2 overall back with the way he was playing for the Minnesota Vikings. Regardless, we wanted to go ahead and we wanted to draft a wide receiver here. Available guys, Devontae Adams, best on the board. Not a problem. We take him here, and we see what returns to us in the second round. Again, the wide receiver position flies off the board, gives us an opportunity to take a running back at this moment in time. We'll go ahead and we'll invest in a guy like Josh Jacobs, who could potentially see some upside in the receiving game this year, and perfectly sits in my number 1 RB position. Perfectly happy there. Now that we get into the third round, the question becomes, do I want to invest in a Chris Carson / Todd Gurley, let them go here at the turn and miss out on them, or do I want to go ahead and draft a wide receiver, 2 out of the first 3 picks? At this moment in time, I really do like Chris Carson more than Todd Gurley or Leonard Fournette and Melvin Gordon by a significant margin, and that's why I'll probably invest in him here, and probably because the guys that are after me are going to probably have to target the running back position, and in doing so, Chris Carson will be gone if I don't select him here. So Chris Carson will be my selection. I will take whatever wide receiver comes back to me, which I'll be pretty happy about. Of course, Mark Andrews comes off the board early 4th. Not really surprised. Not really looking to grab Zach Ertz either. But at the wide receiver position, the available talent still is, is plentiful here. I don't mind grabbing Amari Cooper in the 4th round here to kind of solidify the wide receiver push here. Now the wide receivers are going to fly off the board as they typically do. Coming back to the 5th round, what do we end up seeing on the board for running backs? It's not bad. There's still great talent at this moment in time. And I don't mind any of the following guys. Montgomery, Singletary, Raheem Mostert. Those are guys that I'm pretty confident in going into the season as RB2s. The question is going to be, if I go ahead and invest in one of these guys now, who do I want to go ahead and potentially grab in the following round, in the 6th round? Is it T.Y. Hilton going to still be here? I think there's a very good chance that he's probably not, even though I want him. Am I willing to invest heavily in a RBBC? Raheem Mostert, sure, I think the world of him. I think he's a great running back. I think he's in a great situation. But again, he is going to be a little hamstrung on his opportunity because there is a Tevin Coleman that is always vying for snaps. Same thing with a Devin Singletary and the fact that he had to work through Frank Gore last year. He's going to have to do the same thing with Zach Moss this year. And Zach Moss is a more capable receiving back and a younger guy. On top of the fact David Montgomery, which we've talked about and to an extent, Tariq Cohen's always going to ruin his potential value. So again, all these guys have very similar value. Of the wide receiver positions, I potentially, as of right now that T.Y. Hilton's back healthy, his hamstring's not bothering him, I'm seeing a couple things at camp. I'm excited at the potential of a T.Y. Hilton potentially being a upside wide receiver too. So let's take T.Y. Hilton here. This is probably something I wouldn't do normally because, again, I've said if the running back position, this guy needs a running back. He's going to draft one regardless. If I just address it here, I can go ahead. But I'm satisfied with whatever. I'm okay with taking David Montgomery here. It's not a problem in the 6th. I'm not too picky. When we get to the live mock draft, I will make more definitive statements in terms of decisions. But again, we're just trying to construct the roster here. Now that we've kind of addressed our positions, there's some pretty good wide receivers here, pretty good quarterbacks. Tight ends are still, we're in a pretty good position. I think if I go Ronald Jones here, again, I grab my 4th running back, and now I can kind of relax. And what I mean by relax is I can kind of take a tight end here a little bit earlier than I typically would, and invest in an Evan Ingram in the 8th round, which, again, in terms of draft capital, he's not that much of a high risk, high reward. It's kind of a low risk in the 8th round, in my opinion, at this point. Then we go ahead and then potentially take, Carson Wentz in the 9th again. Not upset about that again. One of these quarterbacks who's been he's been a top fantasy quarterback for quite some time now. In 2018, he would have probably finished as a top 2 quarterback if it wasn't for the injury. Last season, or sorry, not 2018, 2017. And in 2018 was a little rough because he did come back and battle from injury. And even then, he was still averaging great points. Last year, he was great. I think the world of him. I think he's a fantastic fantasy quarterback. Sure, he might not be able to win a Super Bowl for that Philadelphia squad, but we're just gonna have to wait and see. Regardless, we get into the 10th round. There's always still talent available. Running backs, a couple starters here and there, but nothing too crazy. The tight end position we don't have to look at. But again, kind of just looking at the roster construction, we have to heavily rely upon the 6th, 7th, 5th round potential running backs to come off the board. And I don't really dislike this roster at all. I kind of quite like it. If I wasn't able to get Chris Carson in the 2nd round, it may have been a little bit more difficult decision-making, but I could have definitely taken a wide receiver in the 3rd, taken a guy like Leonard Fournette in the 4th. Not too upset about that either overall, but all in all, not a bad roster construction going for a first round selection at the wide receiver position. Now that we've kind of done that, we're going to go ahead and move on and talk about a live mock draft. So the next time you see me, we'll be live mock drafting, trying to select a guy like Michael Thomas in the first round and see what kind of roster we can put together. So here we go. It's just about time for our first selection. I will be taking Michael Thomas off the board if he ends up dropping to me here. If he doesn't, then I'll just go ahead and have to test this out with Devontae Adams and just hope everything kind of pans out properly. But I'm assuming I'll get him with my first overall selection at the 5th spot here. As it currently stands, Christian McCaffrey, Barkley, Zeke, as per usual, coming off the board, Alvin Kamara. Now, we will go ahead and we will take Michael Thomas and we will proceed through this draft. We will update you on our next selection, and that'll be in just about a second. Here we go. All right, we're just about a couple selections away from our second round pick. Again, we have already drafted Michael Thomas thus far. Looking at what has come off the board as of the first 2 rounds, surprisingly, I mean, I continue to see it, but every day I'm not surprised to see quarterbacks coming in the first round again. We'll make a video in the coming days talking about why that is a good or potentially really bad idea going into the 2020 season. But again, James Conner in the early second. There's some people that are going crazy. Devontae Adams somehow falls to the second round. Would have loved that, at least had that opportunity. But again, wide receivers coming off the board. We had ourselves George Kittle just come off the board before Travis Kelce, but in itself is just absolutely crazy. But at this moment in time, I have to go ahead and I need to address the running back position. Perfectly fine drafting Aaron Jones here with my second round pick. We'll just talk about Aaron Jones for a little bit until our third round selection is up. But Aaron Jones, again, if he had not scored 19 touchdowns, which everybody thinks Aaron Jones, he's 100% touchdown, reliant. If he didn't score 19 touchdowns and he scored 9 last year, he still would have finished as a top 10 fantasy back in half PPR scoring format. So all in all, I'm still confident in the idea that Aaron Jones is going to be the lead back for this Packers offense and that he is going to get majority of the goal line work. I understand A.J. Dillon and his giant quads have been taking over Twitter and, everything that has gone on in training camp, but I'm certainly confident in the idea that a guy like Aaron Jones could end up producing once again this upcoming season. Now, as we go into the third round here, a couple selections being made: Travis Kelce, Lamar Jackson in the second, DeAndre Hopkins, Austin Eckler. I was thinking, if Austin Eckler wants to fall to me, that would be beautiful, but obviously that's not going to be the case here today. Looking at the available running backs, we got Chris Carson still available, which I'm really high on. Wide receivers, we still have Kenny Golladay still sitting here, similar to how our first draft ended up proceeding. The top 2 top 2 tight ends and quarterbacks are gone, so I'm not really interested in that in the third round. So as it currently stands, I'm probably going to be investing in one of these wide receivers that is still available. If in fact a guy like Golladay drops to me, I'm perfectly happy with that. Going this coming season. And there goes Golladay. Again, we got to be reactionary. We got to have another player in mind. Looking at the wide receiver position, I'm still happy taking a DJ Moore here with my third overall pick. Who just came off the board? Odell Beckham Jr. If I go ahead and I skip out on the potential you know what? I'm going to take Chris Carson here. Yeah, let's take Chris Carson here. If he wasn't available, then I potentially would have went wide receiver, but considering his availability and the fact that I'm so high on Chris Carson, again, this has been a guy that in the past 2 seasons has continuously proven why he is so valuable in fantasy football. I mean, you just got to go and check out my Chris Carson player profile video that I made a couple weeks back. He is one of the more talented running backs in the National Football League. He's been given ample amount of opportunity. There isn't going to be very much competition with Ronald Jones still being on the physically unable to perform list. Sure, they bring in Carlos Hyde, but he's a handcuff. That's all he is. He's there for an insurance policy. And Chris Carson should be once again a 1,000-yard running back, 30-plus receptions without a doubt, and the upside of potentially 10 touchdowns as he's always kind of been within this offense. Either way, once we move to our 4th selection, I'll go ahead and re-update you, but until then, I'll be right back. All right, our next available selection is up. We are picking for our 4th round pick, and as it currently stands, looking at the available players that just came off the board, unfortunately in front of me, guys that I really like: Amari Cooper, Cooper Kupp, A.J. Brown, McLaurin, and Ridley. Now, when I look at the wide receiver position, I think there's a lot of talent with a guy like Robert Woods, Devontae Parker still sitting down here. I want to go ahead and I want to address the tight end position here because I believe one of these potential wide receivers are going to come back to me. So I'm going to take Mark Andrews here, and then on the turn, as it comes back, I believe there's going to be a stud wide receiver still available there for me. So when we get there, I will re-update you. Be right back. All right, we're just about to make our next selection with our 5th round pick. Again, like I was mentioning, the wide receiver position is stacked. Unfortunately, the guys that I potentially wanted, Robert Woods has come off the board right immediately after my selection of Mark Andrews. Again, some of the running back talent starting to sweep away, but that's not a big deal. Again, looking at the available wide receiver talent, we still have a Metcalf. We still have Devontae Parker, who's probably my selection here, if in fact the opportunity is given going into this season. And then we go ahead and we look at some running backs here. There is still a lot of talent, but the question is, if I let this talent go, will I be able to regain the potential of that in the following rounds, considering the draft is going to go away from me for quite some time now? That is the risk that I have to be willing to take at this moment in time. Again, if I let the wide receiver position go and come back, we're going to be looking at a pretty thin roster in terms of wide receiver depth. I know I drafted an early wide receiver by the likes of Michael Thomas, but again, we're just going to have to be willing to take this step here. We're going to go ahead. We're going to draft Devontae Parker here as my second wide receiver. Again, the drafting of Mark Andrews pretty much solidifies that I'm not going to be able to get that flex as early as I want to, and that's perfectly fine considering the drop-off of production from tight end, number 3 to number potentially 12. I mean, if we go back and we look at last season's productivity in terms of half-point PPR scoring formats from the number 1 tight end of Travis Kelce last year in comparison to the number 12 tight end, it was like about 100-point difference. That's the kind of thing that I'm trying to avoid by drafting Mark Andrews early, and I understand I might get a little bit less depth at the running back position early, but I'm pretty confident there's a couple guys still available on the board once we get there that can definitely be some difference makers for my team. But until we get there, I'll be right back. All right, we're a couple selections away from our next pick. Again, we will be picking our 6th round selection here at this current moment in time. A couple of players are coming off the board. We get a little bit of a quarterback run, but again, the running backs that I anticipated coming off the board have already gone. The wide receivers that are of talent potentially gone, but again, there are still guys like Keenan Allen available to be drafted. Potentially a guy that I'm going to go with here. Looking at the available running backs, again, of the difference of these guys, I'm not really too excited. I could potentially come back and grab James White, who's going to be extremely valuable this upcoming season. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to invest in my RB3 being Keenan Allen, and then go ahead and come back and select potentially James White as a flex option. But regardless, until we get there, I'll be right back. All right, we're a couple selections away from our next pick. Like I mentioned, we definitely need to address the running back position. We did draft 2 running backs in the first 3 rounds, but after that, neglected them to an extent because of the value that was available at other positions on the board. As it currently stands, the draft is coming off the board at a couple tight ends at the end of the 6th. Quarterbacks kind of flooding off the board at the beginning of the 7th round. In terms of the quarterback position, I'm not really worried. We still have Drew Brees still available here that I think if it's between him and Carson Wentz, I'm perfectly fine with in the coming rounds. In terms of the running back position, again, I mentioned J.K. Dobbins, Jordan Howard, and James White are all guys that I like. At this moment in time, we're going to go ahead and invest in a James White running back. Again, with his productivity the last couple seasons, the fact that Sony Michel is injured at this moment in time. I mean, if we go back to 2018, we saw what James White was capable of doing in that backfield. He was given the starting running back reins in a backfield that gives their respective running backs the most touches out of all teams in the National Football League. I mean, in terms of total touches through the air and on the ground, the Patriots have led the league in the last couple seasons now with RB opportunity. If, in fact, Sony Michel is going to miss time, it's going to be between Damian Harris. Lamar Miller, I'm not really too concerned about. But James White is going to definitely be utilized a lot in this offense. On top of it, he's going to be the McCaffrey to Cam Newton, being able to catch the ball out of the backfield at least 50, 60 times this upcoming season is not going to be something that we should be surprised about. I mean, James White has consistently done that over the last couple of years as Brady's number 2 overall receiving option in the last 2 seasons. And I think he can definitely be utilized to the same extent with Cam Newton in this upcoming offense. So that's why I'm so confident drafting him as a potential flex option while waiting and investing in other players. But regardless, we're going to go ahead and we'll fast forward to our next selection. All right, our next selection is just about up. Again, like I mentioned, we only just addressed our 3rd overall or 3rd running back on roster just with this last selection. I think I'm willing to go ahead and, if available, take J.K. Dobbins here, a guy that has extreme upset, and he's drafted right in front of my face. Not a problem. But listen, if he was available, I definitely would have taken him there. At this moment in time, looking at the available players at the running back position. Oops, let's go ahead. That's wide receivers, running backs. I'm not looking, now that we've gotten into this point where there's not that extreme upside available, I think I go ahead and I address my quarterback position. I'll take a guy like Carson Wentz here in the 8th round and not, particularly too crazy about it. I think great selection all in all. I've been able to get him in the 9th round in terms of fantasy pros, but I think at this moment in time, I probably wouldn't be able to grab him if I let him go. But as of right now, what we're looking for is potential running backs and or wide receivers that can sit on roster here for the rest of the season. Still a lot of talent available here at wide receiver. We have Marvin Jones and Jamison Crowder, who I'll always go back to in terms of the well of opportunity they continue to get. Deontay Johnson still here. Sterling Shepard, who could potentially be the #1 wide receiver for the New York Giants. I mean, Anthony Miller, who had a couple, games over the late game stretch, which really proved his, viability from the slot position for the Chicago Bears. Still a lot of talent available at the wide receiver position. Not too stressed out about that. In terms of running back, that's where my biggest stress has become. It's been a matter of where can I find the 3rd or 4th running back that is going to consistently produce for my roster. I'm looking for high upside, but I'm also looking for potential opportunity. If I go ahead and I invest in a Phillip Lindsay, there's a still a pretty good opportunity here that he can get upwards of potentially 200 touches this year. And if he can go ahead and do that, whether it's 40 catches through the air and 160 on the ground, I could potentially see that from a Denver Broncos offense. I could similarly see Tevin Coleman try to get some of that work, but in terms of running the ball that many times, I don't know if that's a possibility for him this upcoming season, considering how much Raheem Mostert is kind of broken out. But he's also another guy that is a handcuff, but has the potential of getting weekly points. As it currently stands, same thing with Marlon Mack, but Marlon Mack, the only difference is not going to get any work in the passing game, which by itself pretty much eliminates him in my mind in terms of, do I want to potentially play him as a weekly start in the flex position? That in itself is it's just tough to do. So potentially we look towards the wide receiver position, try to invest in someone that can be of the flex potential, 10 plus points, and fill this spot. At this moment in time, going into the 9th round, looking AJ Green in the eyes, I might be crazy doing it. Is he already hurt? Let me just look at this real quick. Has tweaked his hamstring. That's going to be a no shot. We're not even going to attempt it at this point. We'll go back to the well. We'll take a Phillip Lindsay. And then when we get to our next selection, which will probably be focusing in on some wide receivers, I'll update you once again. Our next selection is just underway. As it currently stands, the running back position has depleted. I was looking to potentially get Zach Moss here in the 10th round. Damien Harris still on the board, a guy that I'm potentially looking and investing as of this moment in time. But a wide receiver by the name of Jamison Crowder still on the board. I will probably be the only person to launch Jamison Crowder's ADP into a second round, or not a second round, but a couple rounds higher than it should be. Because to be honest, Jamison Crowder is one of the most underrated wide receivers in the National Football League. If you haven't checked out my wide receiver video in which I talk about sleeper wide receivers, you can go check that out right now on the channel. I talk about Jamison Crowder along with other wide receivers who I'm really high on this offseason in terms of guys that extremely undervalued, yet you can grab them in the 10th round and find yourself a wide receiver 3 or flex on a weekly basis consistently because of how good they are. And the fact of the matter is, Jamison Crowder is the #1 wide receiver on his team. He's going to see upwards of 10 targets a game potentially this season. Sounds like a success to me. All right, anyway, when we get to our next pick, I will update you. All right, our next selection is just underway. I'm hoping that we can potentially get Damien Harris with our potential next selection. Again, we'll talk about the players that I'm eyeing at this moment in time. As you can see in the top right corner, I have a couple players queued up that I'm hoping will drop to me as of this moment in time, going into the 11th round. Again, a lot of the handcuffs are being drafted at this juncture. A guy like Alexander Mattison could be the selection here if, in fact, Dalvin Cook was to hold out. But considering the information of Dalvin Cook playing and ready to go, I'm not really too excited about grabbing an Alexander Mattison at this moment in time, unless I already owned Cook and needed to go ahead and lock down that duo. As of this moment, okay, so here we go. Let's see what is available. The running back position, Damien Harris still here, Justin Jackson still here. At the wide receiver position, guys like CeeDee Lamb, Jalen Reagor still available, and then Noah Fant, who I've also queued up, still available. So at this moment in time, we're going to go ahead, we're going to grab ourselves Damien Harris. We'll lock down 2 of the guys that, in my opinion, are going to run this New England backfield if, in fact, Sony Michel is going to be gone for a little while. If Damien Harris wants to be a stud running back and step up, that'd be great. Now, with our next couple selections, I'm probably going to try to get the players that I've queued up. Again, Justin Jackson is going to get first team reps, could be the Melvin Gordon of that Los Angeles Chargers team this upcoming season. Obviously, had a little bit of a limited role in comparison to what Melvin Gordon was able to do last couple seasons. But again, I think Justin Jackson just got taken. They just get no, Alexander Madison, excuse me. Anyway, so the whole point is Justin Jackson's a great player. CD Lamb's a great player. In terms of the wide receivers that I have, I already have 4 on roster. I went ahead and I heavily invested in running backs because, again, I needed to invest in running backs. Now I have 5 of them. I have 4 wide receivers. I need to go ahead and draft a wide receiver in the next coming round. So probably it'll be a Lamb or a Rieger. I'm trying to go with rookie upside. Potentially try to find the Terry McLaurin of this year or the A.J. Brown of this year within the 12th or 11th round, whichever it may be. And then obviously I do want to grab a second tight end just in case. Let's say, for example, something happens with Mark Andrews, another injury flares up. There's always a possibility that that could happen. I don't want to be left without a second tight end. Or if, in fact, I can invest in a Noah Fant, he ends up producing later in the season, I can trade him away for potential upgrades at other positions. But that's basically it. Until our next selections here, that's pretty much the roster. I'm not too upset about this overall construction. Obviously, there was a couple players that were drafted right in front of me, which I potentially would have wanted instead. But honestly, starting off a draft with your 2 starting running backs, Aaron Jones and Chris Carson, your top 3 wide receivers, your 1 through 3, Michael Thomas, Devontae Parker, and Keenan Allen, who have been consistent, throughout the last couple seasons here. Obviously, Devontae Parker more recently this past season. Mark Andrews, a top 3 tight end, and then you go ahead and you just build depth upon your bench with guys that could potentially be flex plays and come in on bye weeks and produce 10 plus points on the drop of a hat. Now, I'm just kind of curious, what came off the board? Let me go look at the wide receiver position here a little bit. Jalen Reed. Okay, so CD Lamb came off the board. Looking at the available wide receivers, I would always want to go with an upside rookie. That's always what I'm kind of eyeing at this moment in time. But regardless, until our next selection is here, it'll either be a Justin Jackson. It's definitely going to be a wide receiver. So I'll probably go Rieger here. Regardless, I want to thank everybody for watching. Please like today's video if you liked it. Let me know what you guys think in terms of starting off with a wide receiver right out the gate. Where do you think the biggest failures are in terms of what people continue to avoid? Is it that they don't draft the second wide receiver early enough? Is it that the running back position falls apart a little too early because of it? Because again, let's go ahead and draft Rieger here. There is always a possibility that going wide receiver in the first round could hurt you more than it helps you. I mean, we've seen it in terms of the drop off of production. If you miss out on a top 12 back, I talked about it in yesterday's video, which you can find. It is tough to go ahead and figure that out. But we wanted to go ahead. We wanted to try this. We did a couple, warm-up drafts. We did this live mock draft. Again, I don't think this is a bad overall team. I just don't know if you can, definitely win your whole league with this unless you're getting consistent production from the starting 2 running backs that you drafted. Avoiding a running back in the first round, it's definitely tough. And sure, Michael Thomas is expected to put up that 16, 17, 18 points per game minimum with the upside, of course, of a 25-point game. And be consistent like he was in the back end of last season. But if he can't do that and if he's not up to par, then he's going to definitely be a detriment more than he's a help for your overall roster. But regardless, thank you everybody for watching. Make sure you subscribe to the channel. We're trying to get to 13,000. Be a friend, tell a friend about the channel. I know a lot of you are trying to keep me as your secret, but either way, thank you everybody for watching. And until next time, I'll see you guys. Peace.